action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today, I've caught Giles Rhys Jones. As CMO of What 3 Words, Giles is helping change the world for the better by addressing it all with just 3 words. Prior to this, he spent 20 years in advertising, beginning his career at Saatchi Saatchi and culminating in 10 years as Digital Strategy Director at Ogilvy, over which time he worked with clients such as Unilever, IBM, British Airways, Cisco and Philips. He's visited number 10 Downing Street and has been awarded the Cannes Lion Grand Prix for innovation, amongst other accolades. Giles says, "We're pretty ambitious. We want to become a global standard. We want people to see word.word.word and immediately recognise it as an address. That's the goal." Welcome to the show, Giles.
Thanks very much for having me.
Right, 7 quick-fire questions then. Mac or PC?
Mac, for sure.
Client side or agency side?
Client side.
Ooh. Independent or network?
Ooh. Depends the task at hand.
Saatchi Saatchi or Ogilvy?
Oh, that's a tough one. Ogilvy, probably.
Red or white?
Red.
Deadlifts or bench press?
Deadlifts. I hate bench press.
Cannes or Downing Street?
Well, one has got a lot of rosé, so I go for Cannes.
No rosé in Downing Street, or less?
We weren't offered, for sure.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. So, Giles, what was your first ever job, and what was your first job in advertising?
Wow. So I did. I've done some weird and wonderful jobs. I think that touring the local neighborhood on my bicycle with my friend Raymond, offering to wash people's cars, was one of the earliest memories. But everything from baking and decorating cakes to washing pots and pans, I've kind of really done many things to earn money over the years. And then first proper job was at Saatchi's. I was taken on as a kind of summer intern for a few weeks, and I managed to stay for a couple more weeks. And after about 6 months, they started giving me some money, and just under a year, I think, I interviewed for a kind of permanent role there and got the job. So started off as an intern at Saatchi's.
Oh wow! And what was that? What did that first proper job look like then at Saatchi's? What were you doing day in and day out?
I was doing retail activation for Hewlett-Packard printers. So it was shelf wobblers and banners and pallets of printers in PC world in 15 different countries. It was super exciting, and it was a kind of good training ground. One of my roles was to coordinate all of the European assets, and we had this massive presentation. And I got all of their assets, all of their posters and print ads and shelf wobblers. They'd all sent them in to the office, and I'd laid them out beautifully on the floor next to my desk in preparation for the presentation. And I came in the next morning, and the cleaner had thrown them all away.
No.
So I was incredibly unpopular with everybody. I had to phone them up and get it all in again. But that got me thinking about there had to be a better system for organising this stuff, and the internet had just started to take off, and I had an X400 email account, and so what I helped to build was Saatchi Brain, which was a kind of system for collating these sorts of things. So that's kind of what piqued my interest in doing things online, kind of better, faster, easy way of doing it. All kicked off by a cleaner at Saatchi Saatchi.
Did you ever speak to the cleaner?
No, I suspect it might have been one of my fellow graduates doing it as a joke, but no.
Okay, so given as you say, the internet started to really establish itself. Did your role then evolve alongside that? Did the internet become something you were more actively involved in at work?
Yeah, so we started Saatchi Vision, which was a anything that wasn't TV, press, poster, retail. So we were doing 3D lenticular things. We were building websites, doing banner ads, doing installations. Anything that didn't quite fit into the box, we were playing around with, and that was a fantastic time. We were inventing things as we went along. So yeah, that was a great time to start off doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and so why did your time at Saatchi end? How did that happen?
Digital was always an add-on to actually the kind of main business of selling TV and press and poster in those days. And so I actually moved to agency.com, which was a kind of dedicated digital agency because I believed that was the way forward, and so moved to that to work on British Airways and some other big accounts.
Okay, great. And actually on in that journey and both prior to and post roles at Ogilvy, you've been involved in starting agencies, is that right?
So I helped to start Agency Republic, which was actually a joint venture between agency.com and Clayton Healy. So kind of digital marketing, digital advertising, and kind of traditional below the line work. And so I helped to start Agency Republic, and then I moved to Hong Kong and helped to start up a brand consultancy in Hong Kong, which was kind of more rounded marketing consultancy. So yeah, exciting times. So it's enjoyable to kind of build stuff from scratch.
And so you enjoyed that experience. What sort of challenges did you come up against, especially going in terms of scale, going from an agency, a network agency like Saatchi's, to starting something from the ground up?
I think with Agency Republic, it was a lot easier because we pulled in people from kind of both the parent agencies in together. So that was easy. I think the key challenge was to kind of differentiate the agency and have a very kind of clear point of view. Otherwise, you fell into the this is what every agency says. So we try to be very clear about the kind of proposition and try to be true to that through everything that we did. That it was there that I learned the kind of power of press coverage for Agency
Hmm.
Republic. We were constantly in the press because we always had a point of view that was slightly different, and we always said things that would get people commenting. So that I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, what's the secret? Asking for a friend, of course. It is from my perspective anyway, just having that clear point of view and being different. In fact, a podcast we recorded with a lady called Kerry O'Connor, who runs a consultancy business called Tonic for agencies. She kind of echoes that point entirely, where there's, I think she said, there's 30,000 agencies in London, which, I mean, that alone is terrifying, but so many of them look and sound like each other and say the same stuff, and you can almost put them all in one bucket and think of them as one thing.
Yeah, just and pick one out. I mean, whenever we used to put out a comment, whenever we commented on a story, when we put out a press release, the kind of the benchmark for the quote was, is this something that someone else could have said? And if it was, we would scrap it and try and write something else that was inherently kind of what we believed and how we behaved. So yeah, that was kind of key. Is like, if someone else can say this and someone else can do this, then it's not us, and we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's true of just a shared opinion, really, isn't it? If you've got the same opinion as someone else in the room, then one of you's redundant.
Yeah.
And then I don't mean to fast forward what was a fantastic career in advertising, but ultimately you got out of agency life. Was that always the plan?
I really enjoyed agency life. It was exciting. I got to work on some amazing brands and travel around the world. But I met the team at What Three Words and thought they had this amazing idea that could really use some kind of marketing support and could use some better framing and kind of help with taking it to market. So it was the kind of right time to move across.
For anyone listening who isn't aware, which I think that number has got smaller in recent weeks because of the wonderful publicity that What Three Words has enjoyed. But for anyone who is unclear, can you explain what Three Words actually is?
Sure. So we're a simple way to talk about a location. We have cut the world into 57 trillion 3 meter by 3 meter squares, and then we've given each one of those squares a 3-word address. So 3 dictionary words to describe any spot on the planet. We have a clever algorithm that converts kind of long and complex GPS coordinates to words and back again. And I mean, the advantages are it's easier to remember, it's easier to say, it's easier to write on a package. It's a portable pin. It's a pin that you can use in kind of many other ways, and we're being used all over the world. Everything from pizza deliveries to the emergency services to even cars. You can get into a Mercedes and say 3 words, and it knows where you want to go. So the company started about 6 years ago. I joined 5 years ago, and we've been kind of building the brand and the partners and the business model since then.
I recall when I first heard the idea, and I got it straight away, but I found it quite mind-blowing. And in fact, I recall, because it was about 5 years ago, probably a bit under, that I sent a fanboy message to you on LinkedIn to just say, this is fucking brilliant. This is insanely brilliant.
Yeah.
Literally anywhere in the world, to the accuracy of being within a 3 meter square, you can distill that address into just 3 words. I mean, that is just it's just so good. Everything about it.
It's phenomenal, and certainly it's quite a pleasure when people say kind of what do you do, and you explain that, and you watch them, and you watch them go, huh, and then they think about it a little bit, and they go, oh wow, and then they go, but then you can do this, and then you can use it for that, and I can meet my friends here, and God, Ocado never gets to the right place, and all of a sudden you see they think of all the possibilities that a system like this offers, and that's certainly been a kind of key driver for why I enjoy this place, is that the applications are phenomenal and ever changing, and we discover ways people are using it that we hadn't thought of, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I mean, first and foremost, you think the accuracy of actual street addresses is instantly so much more efficient and effective and just better for many reasons. But really, you don't really make the link immediately. Certainly I didn't, and people I've talked to about the idea. You don't immediately think of, well, what if you're meeting somewhere that isn't a street address? What if you're meeting in, I don't know, the woods? That sounds a bit creepy. I'm not trying to suggest we should all go and meet in the woods, but let's say we wanted to. You could be that precise with where you are in a wooded area, in an open field, and that really is when you start to think, oh my God.
Yes, I think one of the challenges we've got is when you talk about an address, people instantly jump to, well, I live at 37 Kenilworth High Street, and people jump to a home, and addresses work pretty well in those circumstances. But then you think about, actually, I'm sitting here now and I'm looking out at a view which encompasses the canal and some housing complexes, none of which are easy to describe where they are. And street addressing doesn't cover everywhere. And actually, in rural parts of the UK, it's pretty poor. And then you go, actually, farmers, runners, explorers, adventurers, anybody who wants to meet in the park or on the beach, all these places are super difficult to describe. But trying to get a shortcut for that was one of the challenges we had. And so we said, look, actually, let's call it an address, and work through the assumption that addressing is good. That's one of the challenges we have. People assume that addressing is good.
So where in particular is addressing not good? I mean, your example of park or beach was much better than my example of the woods. So who is using it? Or who can use it? Presumably anybody can use it.
Anybody can use it, and it's being used. The app is free. People can use it. Our business model is we charge a license fee for businesses that integrate our software into their tech. So if I'm a delivery company, I can save myself a lot of money by going to the front entrance rather than wandering around the streets trying to find it. So we make money like that. And the initial kind of marketing push that we had was very much around the places that you expect that had bad addresses. So Mongolia and Africa and parts of Asia. A lot of the work we were being used in was humanitarian. And our business model is structured that we give it free or for a nominal fee to aid in humanitarian NGOs, emergency services, charities, that sort of stuff. And that played super well in the press because it is a story that people can relate to, because they go, yes, of course, places in Africa don't have a street address. And then you say, and actually we're being used to install solar panels in these homes and to enable microfinance in these places. And people go, wow, that's you guys are doing the right thing. So we got a lot of coverage off the back of that, and we got a lot of brand love off the back of that, and a lot of understanding. And then the kind of next phase was to we totally avoided the startup press and the tech press.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to become a kind of flash in the pan. Here's the latest cool thing. Play. We went to kind of big business titles, and actually one of the first things I did was engage a PR agency. They got us coverage in the BBC, and that gave us a huge amount of credibility, and it gave us a kind of reference point. But once we'd established that, then we started moving into the kind of business titles and talked about the economic impact that we could have and the monetary savings that we could have, and we started to kind of shift the conversation to a different angle, which was a much more commercial angle. And now we're moving on from that to the kind of business structure is B2B2C. So we sell our services into Mercedes-Benz, for example, and now Mercedes are running social media campaigns and advertising campaigns in various different parts of the world saying, oh, by the way, you can now use What Three Words in our vehicles. Now that gets us a huge amount of reach, huge amount of awareness, drive downloads of our app, drives usage of our system, and then kind of enables us to sell to other car companies, enables us to sell to other businesses. So that's the way that we've kind of tried to structure the business.
Mutual friend Rory Sutherland, he described What Three Words as the best navigation idea since the tube map, which is high praise indeed. So why do you think What Three Words is so special, and how does it work? Are there any issues with it? Are there any instances where it comes unstuck? So how does it work for blocks of flats, for example?
It's a flat system. The intention is that. Interesting. I met Rory for a drink after I left Ogilvy, and I started to tell him about What Three Words.
Was it like lighting a firework?
Immediately cut me off and went, well, but before I'd even got to What Three Words and started talking about how addressing was bad, he kind of went off on an enormous tirade about how people can never find where he lives. And it's ridiculous, and someone should invent a new thing because postcodes are rubbish. And they cover 5 properties, and he's forever walking across the courtyard to deliver a package to Mrs. Miggins, who lives opposite. And I waited till he finished. I was like, and so this is what we've done. And he was like, that's amazing. And he was like, that's my Spectator article written for this month, and has been a massive fan ever since. But yes, we are not the solution for everything. Street addressing, where it works well. If it's maybe not precise enough, or you live in a block of flats and actually want to specify the entrance to the block of flats, then you might use us as an addendum. But what we're finding is that the use cases are significant and varied, and it is being used kind of all over the place. There aren't any considerable disadvantages to the system, and it can happily coexist with other addressing systems, of which there are many. If you are a surveyor, then it's unlikely that you're going to use What Three Words. You're going to use 18 digits of latitude, longitude, because you need to be tighter than 3 meters by 3 meters.
Right.
But for everybody else, we're human-friendly GPS.
Yeah,
we're just a system that makes it really, really easy to talk about anywhere. And 3 words are short enough that you can commit them to your short-term memory, and then type them into something else, or write them down, or send them to a friend, or say them out loud, and then you forget about them, and you move on to your next thing.
And it works across numerous languages.
Yeah.
My information suggests 26 languages.
37 actually. We just
37.
we've been ramping up our languages. So 37 languages. We've just launched Korean, Japanese, and Chinese, as well as Hindi. So all of a sudden, basically over half the world's population can now talk about anywhere on the planet in their own language. So it's super important that, I mean, we're working through languages and adding more and more to the system all the time.
So to kind of echo your earlier point, for humanitarian reasons and emergency services, clearly there's huge opportunity there. I mean, it literally could be, or probably has been, a life-saving invention. So is that where you have the least friction when it comes to people adopting what 3 words, or is there no real consistent friction?
So there's it's interesting. You get the reaction, which is, this is a genius system, but then there's a chasm between, and I'm going to implement it in my business. And people have legacy systems that have relied on street addressing or other forms of location, and changing those systems is difficult and challenging. So we have a kind of target audience who we call ambitious innovators, who think a little bit differently, who can kind of get things done, and are not afraid, and they don't care that they might have the word lettuce in an address. It's just, it enables something, and it enables a better way. So we met the CEO and chairman of Daimler, and he got it before it even finished the first sentence, and said, right, I need this in my cars, and built it in, and within 6 months we were on the road, which is phenomenally fast in the automotive industry. So finding the right kind of target audience has been key to the success of it. I think that the emergency services is a really interesting one for us, and we came across a tweet about a year ago, maybe, where some fire service tweeted that they'd been called to a fire in the middle of a field, and someone had used what 3 words, and they found it really easily. And that got us kind of thinking that actually this is a really interesting area, and we should offer it. And we're not saying that everybody should just use what 3 words. Use descriptions, use GPS coordinates, use a street address. The emergency service can take many, and some of them have got some of them can locate where you are from your device. But there are advantages and pros and cons to each system. What we're finding is, the police, there's about 45 different emergency services, from police and fire and ambulance and air ambulance and Coast Guard, are now saying, actually, this is a really useful system, because it's easy to transfer a 3-word address. I can say it to a field operator down a radio. I can shout it across a crowded room. I mean, it's just a really easy way to do that. And other digital systems don't quite offer that. Yes, I can drop a pin on a map, but trying to tell someone that is difficult. I can't tell someone it's a pin on a map. So emergency services has given us a huge boost, certainly in the UK. Millions and millions of downloads in the past few weeks, but because it's being kind of endorsed by the emergency services.
Which is wonderful. So on the other end of that spectrum, then, lots of people in advertising have the morals of an alley cat. So can we talk about vanity addresses? So people or brands paying for certain addresses. So Just Do It for Nike, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Is that something that's just a non-starter for what 3 words, or is there commercial opportunities there?
It's a non-starter. The system is fixed, and it needs to be fixed for a kind of number of reasons. We have put similar sounding words really far apart. So table chair lamp is in America, table chair damp is in Australia. So if you mishear it slightly, it's very obvious, because you're hardly, if I'm in New York, I'm hardly going to set off for Australia. The system actually says, I think you meant table chair lamp.
There's an Uber horror story waiting to happen there, Giles.
Actually, our team went to, where did they go? Germany. And they jumped in their cab, and they say, can you take me to Plenigerstrasse? There's 2 Plenigerstrasses in Germany and in Berlin, and she went to the wrong one. and it just happens constantly. There was a guy there was an American tourist who went to Iceland, and he wanted to go to Lagerberger instead of Lagerberger. There's an extra R in the second one,
Wow.
and they're 5 hours apart, and he went to the wrong one. So there's all of these stories are there, and I've done it fairly frequently. I'm sitting in London now, and there are 14 church roads in a 10-mile radius of where I'm sitting. So yes, you get problems with addressing all the time. So that's one of the reasons that we don't allow anybody to change it. That said, there are some really interesting ones out there. So actually, Audi found Vorsprung durch Technik in our German version, and that happens to be a 3-word address in the middle of the rainforest in Brazil. So they drove one of their cars there on an expedition, and they tagged the little cafes that they stopped at and the river crossing that they went to, and they tagged all of those places with 3-word addresses, and eventually managed to get to Vorsprung durch Technik.
That's fantastic. I mean, incidentally, there is no call to action address. Are certain words avoided? I mean, presumably naughty words are prohibited, surely?
Yes, and homophones are taken out. So shop sale and boat sale has been removed. Proper nouns, names, numbers, all those sorts of things. And then in English, it has to be over 3 letters. So there's a system, and we grade the words, so shorter, more memorable words in places that speak those languages to make it easier to use, and kind of longer, more complex ones in deserts and oceans where they're less likely to be used. So there's a few rules around kind of governing the system. But brands have used us for a number of different things. So there is a beer out there called Fear Movie Lions, which is the 3-word address of precisely where it was brewed in America. It's a lovely drink. And then Maltesers in Australia have done a treasure hunt to find the chocolate bunnies, Easter egg hunt, put out kind of cryptic clues. Imagine Dragons hid a load of merchandise at Imagine Dragons Evolve, which is in the desert somewhere in the US, which was the name of their latest album. So lots of people are using it as a way of engaging with their kind of their audience, and others are using it to deliver packages. So it's this weird thing where it's being used as an advertising tool and an engagement tool, but it's also being used as a fundamental business tool.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually, as you just explained, that there are rules to the randomness of how the words are assigned to certain territories. Incidentally, I'm recording, and I don't expect anyone to believe this, so look it up to validate this claim, but I'm actually sat at Host Edgy Sounds.
That's very cool. How many times did you move your chair to get to?
I'm right up in the corner of the boardroom.
Yeah, but that's interesting. So this aids the memorability, right? So people treat it like a little bit of a horoscope, and then you can see them moving around their property or their home and going, "Yes, that's me," and they remember it.
Yeah.
And it's in their head. So we've got people. There's an author actually has just started a Twitter feed where he's writing short stories based on 3-word addresses. Someone's even built an app which builds quite poor poetry, but poetry based on the 3-word addresses that you walk through. So you can hit a button, it will start to generate it as you walk. So people are using it for crazy things.
Yeah, I mean, put stuff out there and people will play with it, won't they? It's lovely.
Yes. Yeah. That's and that's the kind of true sign of something starting to take off when people start playing with it themselves.
So you're getting an amazing amount of PR at the moment, which is great to see, particularly from the BBC, as you mentioned earlier. And most people, certainly people I've spoken to, just can't disagree or find any fault with the idea. In fact, people want to celebrate it and tell their friends. So I know there is you're exploring other executions such as voice activation, drones, autonomous cars. What are the challenges going forward for What 3 Words? Is it mostly legacy systems?
Yes, I think that it's legacy systems. This is the way that we've always done it, and we're a relatively small startup with a certain amount of money, and we want mass adoption of the system. Reaching as many people as possible is key, and doing that cost effectively is key. So that's one of the challenges, is how we manage that. We're finding that PR for What 3 Words is is a great driver for awareness and downloads and just general interest from other businesses and investors. So that's what we do a lot of.
I was meaning to ask you about it being a startup. How have you found that shift into working for a startup? And equally, how have you found being the other side? So getting out of agency side and being client side?
Massively liberating. I mean, I moved from Ogilvy, obviously enormous, to kind of team of 5 in a shared office with 3 other companies, and you go, right, I need someone to, oh no, that's me, and someone else, no, that's me as well, and I was writing the ads on and the social media posts and pushing them out and editing films on my Mac, and doing it all yourself. I think that it's interesting moving kind of, I guess, client side because there's so much more to do and so much more to consider than many people at agencies are exposed to. So agencies most of the time are the kind of communication part of marketing, although they profess to do more, but actually, that's a very, very, very small part of what we do here in the kind of marketing team. And now we've got a team of around 30 people just doing marketing. So we've got pretty much an in-house agency of designers, copywriters. We've got PR. We've got a video team, editors, social media. We've got media planning and buying. We've got researchers. So we've got a pretty big team, all helping to not only sell What 3 Words to other businesses, but also then we work with those businesses to promote What 3 Words. So we're like this year we've made adverts for Ford, Mercedes, Airbnb, Kakao, which is the biggest social network in Korea, and many, many, many more. So actually, as a standalone advertising agency, we would be a team of 30 people, working with some of the biggest brands in the world.
I have a couple of listener questions that I'd like to put to you, Giles. Asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger, but that's not stopped us asking. So Chris asks, is there any potential for What 3 Words to simplify other antiquated systems? He's then listed, e.g. the voting system, paying taxes, exam system, for example. That might just be a dig at inefficient systems, but seriously, is there scope for you guys to tackle any more?
Yes, getting a long series of numbers into something which is a little bit more user-friendly. You see numbers in kind of many, many walks of life, whether that's phone numbers, bank numbers, that sort of stuff. But I think that we've got to be laser focused about what we do as a business and what businesses will drive the tipping point for us. We're seeing a huge interest from the automotive industry. There's over 10 million cars currently on the road that you can use What 3 Words in. And we're soon to announce a number of other car companies who have come on board and have built What 3 Words into their systems. We solve a massive problem for them. So we've got enough to do with fixing bad addressing before we look at the next thing.
Yeah, I think they're busy enough, Chris, is the is the blunt answer or my conclusion of it. So a much simpler question from Pip. So Pip says, what was the first ever What 3 Words address?
Oh, that's really interesting. I think it might have been deep, deep, deep. I think that was the kind of first word on the word list, and is a kind of reference point that we often use. Yeah, so that I think deep, deep, deep was the first one.
I've just put it in on the app. It's near Gibraltar.
Right.
So you're some way out at sea.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So the final part of the interview then, Giles, is our 4 pertinent posers that we put to all of our guests. Number 1 is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh wow. I think that I spent a while at Saatchi and Saatchi, but as soon as I moved into their division, there was anything that was non-traditional, I kind of ceased to have a traditional job title, and So I spent a year or so as an account exec, and then kind of made it up as I went along, which was quite challenging and a bit difficult. And people kept on trying to put you into a box and say, well, you're sort of this. So that was kind of part of the advice I'd give, is kind of don't succumb, don't feel bad about not fitting into a box. That's fine. Get as much experience as you can, doing as many roles as you can, because you need to be able to have, I don't know what the expression is, T-shaped person. You need to have experience in many different things, and you only get that from moving kind of through different job roles.
Really good advice. And that job title rarely will define all of someone's skill sets, and it's important not to believe that it has to equally.
Yes, I had a lot of fun making stuff up, for sure, to put on business cards.
My wife and co-founder here, she fought long and hard, and she normally wins in fights with me, but she wanted director of stuff and things when we started. But
very good. I quite like that one. I might have to take that one.
I might have to cut that bit out of the pod.
Yeah.
Giles, if you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why? So I guess in terms of industry, that can be more so your side now, or historically advertising.
I think that there's an attitude that something new needs to replace something old. So as soon as there's a new kind of advertising stream or a new technique or a new way of doing things, you kind of see it a little bit in our solution, but certainly in the advertising industry is always like, there's always a tension where they go, okay, so what's it going to replace? What's it going to take money from? And then people get protective and go, and blinkered, and that's when you get bad, kind of bad solutions. You get solutions that are based around self-interest rather than the kind of best thing to do. So I think I would kind of banish that and encourage more openness. And it kind of doesn't matter on the solution. It doesn't matter who owns what. It's the kind of solution trumps all.
Wise words. Any books that you would recommend or can recommend to our listeners?
I'm so bad at reading books. I've got
any audio books you can recommend?
So bad at audiobooks. I've got a stack. I've got a library full of books which remain kind of chapter 1 and 2 read. I was quite interested in reading The Messy Middle, which is, there's a lot of chat around like the starting of companies and the exiting of companies, but there's not a lot written about the really horrible bit in the middle, where there's a constant roller coaster of, is it going to work? Isn't it going to work? Massively stressful, kind of running out of money, all those sorts of really, really painful bits. And it was quite therapeutic to listen to a lot of that and go, actually, a lot of other people have been through these kind of growing pains, these scale up pains. We've gone from a company of 5 to a company of 110, 120, and a kind of 5 years old, and it's difficult. So it was good to read that. I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of Rory's book. Big fan of his and his kind of attitude and approach, and have stolen a lot from the kind of way he thinks. So I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that.
Yeah, you certainly should. It's Alchemy. I would recommend getting at least just the audiobook version, simply because Rory narrates it himself. So there's lots of additional bits that didn't fit into the book. Yeah. He goes on his little verbal wanderings, which is beautiful. Yeah. And equally, he told me on the episode we recorded with him on Call to Action that he actually earns more royalties with the audiobook. So he's happy for me to plug that.
No, I think his kind of approach around fame and creating serendipity is something that we're really trying to approach here and push here. The BBC article that went out that absolutely blew up and has, as I said, driven enormous number of downloads and interest, and we're getting contacted by police forces in the US and Canada and kind of across the world about the system. That came from quite a considered approach from us, but also there was a certain amount of luck, as much as we tried to engineer. But there was a certain amount of luck in that. But I'd like to think that we kind of helped to make that happen through all the stuff that we did.
Yeah, and in fact, Rory shared a similar story about sales of his book Alchemy, the majority of which he can now put down to his appearance on the Chris Evans breakfast show. And if he had planned that as part of his strategy to promote and sell the book, then people would have thought he was crazy. But luck just led it that way, and it was successful because of it.
Perfect.
We always dedicate every show to someone, Giles, and we would like to pass that honour to our guest, who has to give their reason why. So would you dedicate this episode, please?
Yeah, I think that I think there's a few people in the industry that I've had, some kind of great advice from, which has kind of affected how I behave. We've kind of mentioned Rory, Charles Fallon, the guy who first gave me my job at Saatchi's, has kind of been instrumental in kind of getting to where I got, kind of where we are today. I think that definitely long suffering wife and family. I've got a side hustle as well, so I actually I bought a gym in southwest London and have a kind of gym business that I run as well. So they often say of an evening at 10 o'clock, well, which business are you working on now? Yeah.
Okay. Well, this episode is very proudly dedicated to Rory, Charles, and Mrs. Rhys Jones and the family. So, can we plug the gym? What's the name of the gym? Let's plug it.
It's called Gymnasium. It's in Clapham. It's a great little CrossFit gym, and run by kind of my training partner and I and some friends.
Awesome. Well, as a final call to action, then everyone can head over to this episode's listing, and we've shared links to everything discussed: the messy middle, alchemy. Primarily, what 3 words and associated links to that. But how else can people get more Giles Rhys Jones? Other than the gym.
Yeah, I don't know how much they wanted me. I'm kind of humbled to be asked to be on the show, because I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing is rocket science. It's good kind of marketing, good marketing approach with a little gamble here and there, and sometimes the gambles pay off and it explodes, and more often actually they don't necessarily come off. So I'm trying to build a kind of model of doing things that I know work pretty well, with a little bit of magic in there. And sometimes as you say, they work and you win a Cannes Lion. But you're always on social media, and you can come and check us out and the kind of stories and what we're up to on What 3 Words. We're always posting how people are using us around the world. The latest one that we just got was they're actually shooting a new Netflix show, and they sent us the call sheet, and they've got all the scene names, and next to all the scene names they've got the 3-word address of precisely with a meeting point for where they're shooting, which is kind of crazy. So those are the little stories that are popping up on a daily basis.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been a real privilege to talk, Giles.
Thanks very much for having me. Cheers.
And thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share and review, and don't hesitate to get in touch with the show direct, submit questions, guest requests. We're on Instagram at CTA Pod, but if you're old school, just email us at hello@calltoaction.co.
Get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try and I try and I try and I try.